Hello there everybody, lords, ladies, gentlemen, and everything else in between. This is the great and glorious Nick Dutch, back on the camera again one more time, talking again about Desteni Productions. Now, I've been criticized for the last video I did about Desteni, spelt with an E and ending with an I, based upon the video which I did. That video was essentially referring to one particular individual who appears to have been heavily influenced by Desteni Productions. So what I thought I'd do in this particular video is go straight to the source, and this is the one of the Desteni web pages, desteni.co.za, and this is from one of the pages there. It says here, what will change the world for all? So this is a statement to suggest there is a certain goal they want for the entire world. Desteni appears to be a combination between some New Age thought, some spiritual thought, and even some ideas which have come straight out of spiritual healing, and appears to be taking things a little further to a point which, and I think you'll see, is actually rather frightening in some ways. So this particular section says, when a principle is guideline, personality and ego becomes irrelevant if the principle is effectively applied. Now, first and foremost, what is personality and ego? It's what you are. It's your sense of individuality as an individual, okay? It's not being absorbed into the collective, but still being able to function within society. It's you doing what you need to so that you can live, eat, provide yourself with shelter, clothing, and everything else. So it's suggesting that all those things become irrelevant. So it's taking away from you something which is essentially you, which I personally find a little scary. It then says, let us look at oneness practically. We are all one as humanity on one planet. Well, actually that's obviously factually inaccurate. There are various different boundaries which separate us socially and economically. So essentially, although we are one race, there are boundaries based upon thoughts, identity, and all the rest of that. So essentially you want to get rid of people's identities, which doesn't seem to make much sense, and it appears to be a form of control to bring about a time when identity is destroyed. It then says, let's look at equality practically. We are all in a human body with the same basic needs of food, home, education, etc. I like the way it says that education is a need. What way do they wish to educate people? That seems rather dodgy to me. I mean, shelter, food, water are your basic needs. Companionship and society are your basic needs. A regular stable income is a basic need. Health is a basic need. Education itself is a secondary need, which is there to find a way of improving society and the economy. Why would education be placed above water, society, work? I find that rather spooky. Now, further on it says, if all laws are made with this in mind, namely all this idea of oneness, equality, and the rest of that, this, which is our oneness and equality, and this is the guideline for all as a principle, all abuse will stop. Well, obviously you've got to have a definition of abuse before you can say that abuse will stop. And essentially abuse is caused by inequalities. Abuse is caused by psychological problems, which could be brought about by health problems. So essentially this is like a psychological mind control thing, which is there to override things which are natural, rather than necessarily treating the causes of the problems. I find this rather spooky. Further on, it then says, this if all systems like the money system, educational system, etc. have at its starting point oneness as humanity and equality as basic needs, starvation stops. Starvation is complex because starvation is a product of the environment. Starvation is a product of economics. Starvation is a product of the interaction of various different groups who have their own identities and their own needs. Starvation is complex, so you can't ever say that you can stop starvation through changing the money system and educational system in accordance with Destiny's ideas. And who's to say that Destiny actually knows how to make those ideas work and work properly? Alright, what is it about the ideology of Destiny which is so well researched, taking into account everything that we humans have built up in the body of knowledge of the economy, that says that they should be the ones to control the money system? This is actually rather spooky. Now, it says further on down, crime will become virtually non-existent. Well, that's essentially a claim of certain forms of Christianity, and that really hasn't happened. Greed stops. That is scary, because if you have too much greed, then things get bad, and that's one of the reasons why we've had the economic crisis, because there's been too much greed. But you need to have a certain quantity of greed so that you can get out there and do something to contribute to the world and society, so that you can basically get your pay, so that you can feed yourself, clothe yourself, give yourself shelter, and all the rest of that. So to stop greed is wrong. Psychological balance is one thing, but stopping greed is impossible and undesirable. It then says corruption stops. Well, that's the same as the point I made earlier on about crime. There are always claims that this, that, and the other will stop corruption. It can't. Okay? Manipulation stops. So this is like an educational system which is there to try and control the educational system and the money system, which will essentially mean that a new manipulating force will come into play to try and stop manipulation through manipulating people. Again, I find it spooky. Now, the final one is actually terrifying and should send a shiver of cold running down your spine. This one is seriously over the top and wrong. It says here, politics stops. Now, what is politics? It's the sphere of human activity whereby individuals and groups attempt to resolve their differences. Alright, so that means equal rights for human beings. That means if someone is being beaten up, they can't campaign to have themselves being protected, because that would be a political action. Alright, if someone is starving, or it's a group of people who are starving, they can't let their needs be known to, let's say, the United Nations and say, can we please have some food aid? Politics is the sphere of human activity whereby individuals and groups resolve their differences. To have a time in the future whereby politics stops, which will mean that you won't be able to do something to create change, to look after yourself and to look after your people. That is actually terrifying. The fact that there are people who are parts of this Destiny cult who think that it is right to say that there will be this wonderful time in the future when they can stop the sphere of activity, of human activity, whereby individuals can resolve their differences and look after themselves. So I maintain the point that Destiny is wrong. Now, I will point out that there are some things which have been written in some of the writings of Destiny which are quite interesting, because they have an overlap with some forms of New Age thought and do have some form of therapeutic benefit aspects to them. But the idea of having this goal in this wonderful utopian world whereby there will be no politics is an abhorrence. Okay, if they want to be taken seriously, they've got to amend what they think the future should be about and what they're trying to achieve. Instead of just saying this, we want a certain result for the rest of the world, what they should be doing is focusing purely upon the therapeutic aspect and being much more well researched in the therapeutic aspect. Alright? But then they would not have the psychological mind control which they are obviously going for. So I maintain my position against Desteni, and I regard it as being very, very wrong on lots of different levels.